Monday Morning House Calls, sponsored by UK Healthcare.
Welcome back inside Mountain News this morning. Dr. Joe Kingery from UK Healthcare is with us once again. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're talking about RSV. Can you explain what this is? What's this mean?
Sure. So RSV is something that a lot of parents have probably heard of, and some people know what it is because they've had kids experience it, and other people have not, certainly. RSV is a respiratory virus that happens. It usually happens in the wintertime. And so wintertime and early spring, both are times that you'll see it. It's a virus that's transmitted from person to person, and typically in adults and even older children, it may just seem like a cold, just another virus that gets passed around, sneezing, runny nose, maybe a little bit of a cough. Nothing big. What we do worry about with RSV are the really small children, especially babies, because it is an infection that gets down into bronchioles, the actual really small tubes in the lungs that transmit air back and forth, and it causes a lot of inflammation and a lot of problems down in there. In babies, because they haven't developed a whole lot and obviously their lungs are still small, it actually causes a lot of problems with inflammation and problems down in with air exchange and being able to breathe. It's something that actually can cause problems enough that you actually have to be in the hospital for. Again, me and you get it, it's probably just going to be like a cold. Babies get it, it can be pretty devastating at times, so it's certainly something that we worry about.
Sure. So how can a parent tell what to look for? What are the signs?
Sure. So again, especially in babies are where you're going to see the problems occur the most. In older children, it's not as big of a deal, but it can be coughing, sneezing, runny nose, and then also some problems with breathing. You'll notice that the baby is having to breathe more often. You may notice some wheezing, and that's because the airways are closed down a little bit, and they're just not working as good as they should with breathing. Also may notice some tiredness. You notice, well, they're not acting quite the same. They're not as energetic as usual. The other problem is they're working so hard to breathe some cases that they're not feeding really well. So you may notice that, well, they're not taking a bottle like they were. They're not feeding like they were before, and that starts dropping off. So we get worried about dehydration because they're not eating as good as they had been, and then obviously we're worried about the breathing because they're having issues with the breathing itself.
Sure. So how does a child get this? Is it contagious, and how long does it typically last?
It's a good question. It is contagious. It's passed from person to person, usually with coughing and sneezing. So anybody in the household who has a baby, I would recommend trying to keep them away from anybody who has symptoms of a cold, because again, you don't know a lot of times, is it RSV or not? The only way to know for sure is to go to the provider, get a test done, and see if it's positive for RSV. So the biggest thing I would say is keeping them safe, keeping them away from people who may be sick, covered mouth, especially older children will get it. And of course they're wanting to be around the baby, hugging them and in their face, so you got to be protective to some degree. But again, RSV is one of those things that we could get a test for. Also, there's a vaccine for it for certain children or babies who meet the criteria. And that's usually babies who were born prematurely or have significant other issues that are lung disease or heart disease related. So that's something to talk to your provider about as well if you got a premature baby or one with heart or lung problems at a really early age.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dr. Kingery.
Thank you.
We'll have more Mountain News in just a moment.